This is what happened to me in the first business. I got frustrated because things weren't working. And I just thought that I guess that means it doesn't work, right? And that wasn't true.
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Carly Pepin with me. Carly, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Carly, you are a human behavior specialist. I know a little bit about this, but I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'm going to kind of let you steer this. So, tell us what is a typical day like for a person that is a human behavioral specialist?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone does a little bit differently, but the way that I love to apply it to my life and my business is I love working with businesses. I love helping them to scale and grow. For me, working with those companies, but then also working with the individuals within the companies to help them to work through any challenges that they're experiencing that are impacting their day to day at their company, understanding their vision to a greater degree so that they can bring it forth into the company. To me, business is an opportunity for a philanthropic cause, genuinely. Like the more service we provide, the more income we make. So I really love working with like business and business owners to just help that continue to get out there in the world and bring people what they want, like that's half the fun. So that's the way that I apply it. And definitely working on mindset, shifting perceptions to ensure that they're just as empowered as they possibly can be in the leadership role.
When you're working with businesses, do you typically work with larger businesses, small businesses? Doesn't matter. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so smaller to mid-range businesses is what I focus on most.
So admittedly, going into this, I was thinking behavioral specialist. I was thinking someone working with special needs, like someone maybe that with autism patients or something like that. But it seems like you're more of like just business, helping them grow, helping them maybe improve performance, something like that. Does that sound pretty accurate?
Yes, and also ensuring like the mindset component and clearing any challenges that they go through. So perhaps they've gone, even in the past, like through a perceived traumatic experience when they were in childhood, things that they haven't been able to let go of that are still impacting them present day. Anything that gets in the way of them on a physical level, on a mental level, just being able to drive the business, the vision into the way that inspires them the most and love their life. Like the most important thing is love your life. If you're a leader in a company, if you're a leader in your own entrepreneurship, then if you love your life, like it just spirals to your clients, to the people who work with you, people connect with you. It's huge.
When you typically work
Mhm.
with businesses, did they seek you out? Do you find them? How does the connection between you and the client, how does that start?
For me, it's a lot of referrals and repeats at this point. I've been in business for over a decade, so you just start to get a better base. And then sometimes I am also seeking people out where I'll go and connect with people. Sometimes they'll be researching and they'll find me. I also don't mind like the cold calling and stuff, so it's kind of fun too. If there's a business that I see or hear of that really inspires me, I'll see if it's a fit. They might not have a need. I might think it's an awesome business, but they might not need me, and that's also fine. But it's nice to connect and see how that goes. But yeah, a lot of referrals, which is really helpful as well.
So let's talk
Yeah.
about the very beginning. Whenever anyone's going down the path of being an entrepreneur, I like to kind of dive into how it all started. So were you working with a company and then decide to go out and do it on your own? Did you just start doing this right out of the gate? How did you start doing this?
I actually had my first company when I was really young. So I was like 18 years old right out of high school. And I had it for, I think, a few years and it didn't work out, which is entrepreneurship. Didn't understand that was entrepreneurship back then, though, by the way. I get that now. So I went back kind of into just the normal work world just because I was like, oh, I guess I can't do it. And I was like, now I know. I was like, oh, that's what being an entrepreneur is about, having companies and them not working until you get the ones that stick. So I went back into the working world for a while, but what was really funny is I was working in these very small companies that gave me the opportunity to be an entrepreneur within a company, right? So that kind of got me comfortable again, like building businesses and growing them. But now I'm just doing it for someone else, which is really funny. And I do remember like a certain point in time, I learned all the human behavior stuff and I had just been doing a lot of work on myself. And I just remember sitting there one day and being like, why do I keep building businesses for other people? Why am I not doing this for myself again? And as you see the difference in the profit levels that the owners receive versus you. And it's not that they don't deserve it, by the way. They've put a lot of energy and effort, but I just thought to myself, like, if you want to build that kind of wealth and create that kind of profit, like it's time to get back out there and build your business or businesses.
You talked about being an entrepreneur within a company. Can you
Yeah.
extrapolate on that a little bit? What exactly were you doing that fit that definition, I guess?
I kept on building divisions in companies that already existed. It was hysterical. So I worked for a photography studio and I was a studio manager and I was also a creative producer for like still photography, right? It was really fun. So we got fashion and marketing, advertising, celebrity. It was really fun. But in that, the guy had so much equipment and he loved to buy and own his equipment, which is so expensive for anyone who knows like pro photography world. It's like just like one piece of the camera was like $30,000 each and he had like five. And it's like, oh my God. So put that in perspective of just like stock sitting there in a cabinet. So we decided to actually start like a rental unit and rent it out. So part of that as well is we're building a company within the company now where we're going out and we're creating this rental business within this unit. So outside of the photographer, like we're just doing all the rental stuff. And then he also had retouchers on staff, which is highly unusual for photographers. So then we started to build a retouching business where we do the rental and the digital equipment, and they'd get to rent all our digital equipment. And then also we would offer them our retouching services. And so it became a business within a business, right? So that was really fun. That's a good example. I worked for a fashion company, wanted to launch a candle brand, again building like the home division, the business within a business. It just kept happening.
And finally, the little light bulb went off in your head, and you're like, I can do this on my own.
Yeah, like I had a great time and I was like, you can make more money if you do this for yourself. And it is going to be more challenging, but still, like the reward is worth the risk.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the photography company buying all that gear and having all that gear. I was speaking to a photographer, Bethany, several months ago at this point, and she talked about that. She talked about all the different lenses you can, the camera
So
bodies, and everything that goes
much.
with it, and the lights, and all kinds of stuff. So I understand that completely. You said, I forget the exact way you phrased this. I'm going to paraphrase, but you said that you learned all the behavioral
Mhm.
stuff kind of along the way. How did you
Yeah.
actually learn all that? Was it through traditional like a university? Did you just books online? How did you start to
Mhm.
gain access to that information?
Yeah, I started with the traditional components and I didn't find it applicable or relatable to my life. Not that it doesn't work, by the way. And I can see that this is everyone's path is different, right? So when I say this, everyone's path is different. What works for you is what's going to be the things that you're meant to utilize, share, that kind of stuff. If it doesn't work, it's just not your path. It's not meant to work. So it didn't work for me. And so I kept on having the same challenges. And with the traditional types too, I kept getting told that this is just stuff I have to live with for the rest of my life. I don't receive information like that very well. Maybe it was the way I was raised, but I just don't. So when someone tells me I can't do something, I'm like, watch me. So I started to seek out other sources. I got my first coach, and what was really interesting is we had focused on an eating disorder, right? Which again, I was told I would just have to like be afraid of food and scared of food for the rest of my life and log food, which makes me crazy, by the way. I do not do that anymore. It's not my life. But when I connected with her to work on the eating disorder, we actually focused on me understanding what was purposeful to me and what I actually truly valued in life and making sure that I was doing what it took to reconnect with that because I had really disconnected from myself. And so I was trying to fill myself up with food. And as soon as I started to reconnect with my purpose and build my life around that, it wasn't like, oh, now life is easy breezy. Like I was still facing challenges, but they were things that were more inspiring. And because I felt fulfilled, I stopped wanting to like binge eat, right? Like that was massive. And that's when I realized like there's so much more to this than I think, right? And I asked her, I was like, basically introduce me to who you know. Like where did you learn this from? And I started studying with just human behavior specialists around the world that kind of had a different specialized focus where it was more about like how do we empower ourselves to wake up daily to do what we love and utilize that as a transformation tool, and how do we understand like why things are occurring in our life and why we talk about the law of attraction and all this stuff, but why are we actually creating it? Like why do we create it? Why is it important? Why is it there? Why? And when you have that why, that's when the transformation and the shift comes within. And it's not something that I could find in a traditional book. It really wasn't anything I could find there. So that's why I started seeking the outside sources, which has helped me to the greatest degree.
Let's talk about the actual behaviors of people. So if someone, when you think about a specific client, maybe obviously, don't mention their names or anything like that, but a
Yeah.
specific person, and think about how you've actually worked with their behavior to help progress them forward.
A really great example is just an individual who, when I first started working with them, they were very stuck and felt like they couldn't move forward in their business. But when we saw what was taking up the most space in their brain, the most space in their mind, it actually had nothing to do with business, by the way. It all had to do with their family. They had a lot of guilt and shame for the impact that they perceived they caused on their family. Right. And all of this is just all in their head the whole time. And so when they went to work, they're just thinking about family, right? When they're trying to like grow the business and come into ideas, they're thinking about their family. And so I go in and I help them to understand what actually occurred, shift their perception, clear the guilt and shame around that, right? And then when that happens, there's a sense of relief. Like we get that weight off our shoulders. And when you stop thinking about that, it opens the space to think about everything else that's going on that you actually want to focus on. So now when they're going to work, it's like they don't have to think about that anymore. That's out of their mind. And now when they're there, it's not even an issue, right? You get to resolve that challenge. So it's funny because sometimes we think we're focused on business, so let's just focus on business. But the truth is, you want to focus on what's the highest like quantity of noise in your mind. What's the thing that occupies the space and time in your mind? What's the content of that? What's the context of it? Let's find out where it originates from, because that's actually what keeps you stuck. That's actually what's giving you a hard time moving forward, because it's got so much real estate in there that you don't even realize there's not any space for anything else. So it's kind of cool because it's like it'll go away with the one thing, but then life is life and it's going to challenge you. So something new comes up. So that's why, you get the weekly sessions, we do bi-weekly sessions, and we just catch up and it's like, okay, what's giving you the most brain noise today? It's like this. All right, let's crank it out and get rid of it. And it's like we move on.
When you're working with a particular client, and obviously every client is going to be different, but what is relatively normal? Do you typically see someone for, 3 months initially and see where it
Mhm.
goes from there, like once a week for 3 months or twice a week for 2 months? Or what does it typically look like when you're working with clients?
Typically, just when I start with someone, it's usually like 3 to 6 months at a time. And then after that, it kind of depends on the person. And this is where it's really beautiful to reflect, because I know some people who are listening now, they're going to be like, oh, I love to work with people all the time. Right. And some people are like, oh, yeah, I like to do little hits and bits and pieces just when I have challenges. It depends on your life purpose and what's most important to you.
I'd like to at least touch on education,
Mm,
usually formal education. I'd like to know if someone is just starting their career and they want to go down this road, what do they need to do? Do they need to go to college? Do they need to get a
mhm.
certificate? Do they need to just pair up with someone? So
Yeah.
for someone that's just starting out in their career, what's a good educational path? What education path did you take, and did
Yeah.
it help or hinder you? I know I just threw a lot at you with education, but I'm gonna let you run
Perfect.
with it.
I love learning. So I love learning and I spend so much time learning and so much money on learning. I love it so much. And it's funny because I don't have a college degree, right? I couldn't actually make it through college. So I love the question that you're asking, because coming from someone who education in my perception is vital, but I couldn't make it through the system, right? So one thing I didn't fully understand is if if you want to be a therapist and you genuinely want to be a therapist and you want that degree, you're going through the system. That's okay. Go for it. Do it if you want to. Understand though, you're not getting out of that. You have to go through the system. If you want the PhD on you, you go through the system. Like that's it. Just get it done. It's fine. I remember when I graduated high school, it was late, but I walked by my economics teacher and he put two thumbs up and he goes, D is for diploma. I barely graduated high school.
So I was speaking with Ashley Mason. Now, despite speaking to her with her first, your episode is actually going to go live before hers. I mean, you're going to beat her out by a couple of weeks. But it was really close. Speaking with her, several days ago, and really, really smart person, very professionally driven, top of her class, right to college, started her business while she was in college. Awesome story, awesome story. And the one question I answered, I said, and I'm paraphrasing now, even though it was a couple of days ago, it's not fresh in my memory. I said, well, what was high school like for you? Because at the time I didn't know she was top of her class. I was like, what was high school like for you? Were you an average person, bottom of the class, top of the class? And then show me that, she was top of the class. But I like your story too, because I like that, you're admitting that, you weren't at the top, you got the D for diploma, but here you are still, successful and making things happen. And I love that story. That is awesome. So awesome. Carly, going back, you said that you started your first business when you're around 18 years old, as an entrepreneur, although you didn't quite know that's what you were doing at the time, I guess. and you said it failed. What lessons did you learn from that failed business that carried you forward and helped to make your current business successful?
Yeah. So what's really important in business and something that I love is just remembering to stick with it. Right. And I actually see this present day too, especially in the coaching consulting world. There are so many coaches on this planet. It's actually insane the quantity of coaches there are. But I mean, again, I love learning. I love studying. That's one of the things that gives me an advantage and an edge. But another thing that gives me a huge edge is when the going gets tough, I don't stop. If business is slow, I'm not slowing down with business, right? If business is fast and things are going really great, I don't actually stop doing what I was doing during slow times. So I'm very consistent on the back end to ensure that my business is not only stable but growing, right? And this is something that I see with a lot of people is they'll get frustrated in business. This is what happened to me in the first business. I got frustrated because things weren't working, and I just thought that I guess that means it doesn't work, right? And that wasn't true. The truth is that these certain components weren't working, and I didn't understand that the next step is the education, sometimes hiring outside individuals to assist us if we can't get the education in the way that, just like a book, a course, or anything like that, school, something like that, right? We hire someone else who can come in as an expert and help us. Sometimes it's hiring people because you're like, you can't do everything all at once. I didn't understand those dynamics. I understand them now. So it's like if something's not working, I don't look at it like, oh, my business isn't going to work. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder why that didn't work, right? And that's a different question. Like, I wonder why that didn't work. Is it me? And is it something I actually don't want to do that I'm trying to force myself into? Or is it genuinely like something in the systems or the strategies, right, that I've put into place? And it's really a beautiful opportunity to reflect on what's going on kind of within us and inside us. So it's so easy to give up on a business, which is why we see so many entrepreneurs. They have like a couple years go at it and then they stop. And there's also the unrealistic expectation. Like I thought after being in it for a couple years, it was supposed to work. That's not how it works.
When I was speaking with Kristen Williams, she was a self-published author, and she was at the beginning of the series. Go way back, everyone. Go check her out. Um, but one of the things that she said, which kind of stuck with me, was that it wasn't until she got an editor that she started to, think of herself as being an author. And I kind of like to carry that idea forward. So, Carly, for you, what was that moment in time where you were able to like look at yourself and say that you are a human
Mhm.
behavioral specialist? Was it after getting your first client, your 10th client, after you got your business cards? Do people
Yeah,
even still have business cards?
I still have
you know, at what point did you start to
them.
identify as being that?
I decided I wanted to be one for sure. And I went and I studied. And when I had certainty in what I was doing was getting results, that's when I truly started to identify as it, right? There's a couple ways to do it though. Like you can do it that way, or when before I started speaking, I remember someone saying, just call yourself an international speaker. And I was like, really? Because I don't do it now. And he's like, do it. And he's like, watch what happens. And I am now, right? Like I genuinely am. It's amazing. And so part of it too was I put that out there, and I have international speaker and human behavior specialist. And I put speaker out there before I became a speaker. And now I am a speaker and I do speak worldwide, right? So that's amazing how that occurred. Also, part of it was pushing me to own that within myself and drive me to do it.
There's this idea you dress for the job that you want, not the job you have. And it kind of
Mhm.
reminds me of that, referring to yourself as an international speaker, before you're doing that, you refer to yourself as that, and then you get it, which is very, very fascinating. Carly, I'm running a little bit short on time, but one thing I like to do whenever I'm speaking with someone, I like to give them the opportunity to share a cause they believe in, a project they're working
Mhm.
on, more about your business. So if there's something specific you'd like to discuss, I'd like to open the floor up to you.
Yeah, I truly believe like philanthropy is a great opportunity to do through business. It's a fair exchange opportunity for us to help others and, be compensated as a result. And I think it's beautiful when people have the opportunity to take what's on the inside and bring it into a physical product and service and bring it to life and bring it to, because if you're thinking about it, people need it, people want it. If it's in your head, it's in their hearts. And so it's just a matter of getting it out of your head and getting it out into the world so that you can bring it to individuals and getting rewarded for that. It's a lot of work, but you get rewarded. So if you're listening and you have the ideas, please pull it out.
Carly, I absolutely love that. That actually resonates very strongly with me because that's why I started doing this. I wanted to talk to professionals, find out what they're really doing, what their jobs are really like, and share that with people that might be feeling a little lost with their profession or not know what they want to do either when they grow up or in the middle of their life. So that resonates very strongly with me. So I appreciate that anecdote. Carly, it's been awesome having you on Time We Discuss and we learn what it's like to be a human behavioral specialist.
Yeah, thank you so much.